Heya, the White Death. Imagine being a 5'3" farmer who has never been to war. The Soviet Union, with an army of 750,000 soldiers, 6,000 tanks, and 3,000 aircraft, invades your tiny country of 4 million people. You grab your rifle, dress in white camouflage, and head into a forest where temperatures drop to negative 40 degrees Celsius. You lie in the snow for 12 hours at a time, barely moving, barely breathing. And over the next 100 days, you kill over 500 enemy soldiers. 500, an average of 5 kills per day. The enemy is so terrified of you that they call you the White Death. They send counter-snipers to hunt you. You kill them all. They send entire artillery units to bombard your position. You disappear into the snow like a ghost. Finally, on March 6, 1940, just days before the war ends, an enemy sniper shoots you in the face with an explosive bullet. Half your jaw is blown off. You fall into a coma. And then, 11 days later, you wake up on the exact day the war ends. You've survived. And you live to be 96 years old. This isn't a legend. This isn't folklore. This is the true story of Heya, the deadliest sniper in military history. A man so skilled, so patient, so deadly that he changed the course of a war by himself. By the end of this video, you'll discover how a quiet Finnish farmer became the most feared soldier in the Soviet army, why he refused to use a scope on his rifle, and how one man's courage helped save his nation's independence. Stay with me, because Heya's story will show you what it means to fight for your homeland against impossible odds. Part 1. The Farmer. Early Life and Training. The story of Heya begins on December 17, 1905 in the small farming village of WarriorJourneyTales in southern Finland, near the Russian border. Finland at the time was part of the Russian Empire, though it had a degree of autonomy. The people of Finland were caught between two worlds, their Scandinavian heritage and Russian control. Heya was born into a family of farmers in the Kishkinen hamlet. Life was hard. The Finnish wilderness was unforgiving, with long, brutal winters where temperatures could plummet to negative 40 degrees Celsius, and snow could pile up 2 meters deep. The summers were short. The growing season was brief. Every harvest mattered. Heya grew up working on his family's farm, learning the value of hard work, patience, and self-reliance. He was a quiet child, mild-mannered and introverted. He didn't seek attention or recognition. He simply did his work and kept to himself. But Heya had one passion: hunting. The forests around WarriorJourneyTales were filled with game: deer, rabbits, foxes, birds. Heya would disappear into those forests for hours, stalking animals with an old bolt-action rifle. Hunting wasn't a hobby for Heya. It was survival. The meat he brought home fed his family. And through hunting, Heya developed extraordinary skills. He learned to move silently through the forest, leaving no tracks. He learned to judge distances with uncanny accuracy. He learned to control his breathing, to remain perfectly still for hours, to wait for the perfect moment to take a shot. And most importantly, he learned patience. A hunter who is impatient will starve. A hunter who can wait, who can endure discomfort, who can merge with the landscape, will always succeed. Heya became an exceptional marksman. He competed in local shooting competitions and won trophy after trophy. His home was reportedly filled with awards for marksmanship. But Heya never bragged. When group photos were taken at competitions, Heya always stood in the back, letting others take the spotlight. In 1925, when Heya was 19 years old, he was conscripted for mandatory military service in the Finnish army. All Finnish men were required to serve 15 months. Heya was assigned to the Bicycle Battalion 2 in Raivala. He attended non-commissioned officer school and was promoted to corporal. But after his service ended in 1926, Heya returned to civilian life. He went back to his farm, back to his quiet life. For the next 13 years, Heya worked the land, hunted in the forests, and lived peacefully. Then came November 30th, 1939, and everything changed. Part 2. The Winter War begins. David versus Goliath. In November 1939, tensions between Finland and the Soviet Union reached a breaking point. Soviet leader Stalin demanded that Finland cede territory along its border, including the Karelian Isthmus near Leningrad and the Hanko Peninsula for a Soviet naval base. Stalin offered to give Finland other land in exchange, claiming it was a fair trade. But the Finns understood what this really meant. If they gave in to Stalin's demands, their independence would be over. The Soviets would keep making demands until Finland was swallowed whole. So, Finland refused. Stalin was enraged. On November 30th, 1939, the Soviet Union launched a massive invasion of Finland without a declaration of war. Soviet bombers attacked Helsinki. The Red Army poured across the border with overwhelming force. The numbers were staggering. The Soviet Union had a population of 170 million. Finland had 4 million. The Red Army sent 750,000 soldiers into Finland. The Finnish army had 300,000, many of them reservists and farmers. The Soviets had 6,000 tanks. Finland had a few dozen. The Soviets had over 3,000 aircraft. Finland had about 100. By every measure, Finland should have been crushed within days. But Stalin and his generals made a critical mistake. They underestimated the Finns, and they underestimated the Finnish winter. The winter of 1939 to 1940 was one of the coldest on record. Temperatures dropped to negative 40 degrees Celsius, and snow piled up 2 meters deep in some areas. The forests were dense and impassable to tanks. The roads, as they were narrow and easily blocked. The Soviet soldiers were not prepared. Many didn't have proper winter gear. They wore standard uniforms that provided little protection from the cold. They didn't have skis or snowshoes, so they were forced to march through waist-deep snow. They stood out against the white landscape in their dark uniforms. The Finns, on the other hand, were perfectly adapted to these conditions. They had lived in this environment their entire lives. They wore white camouflage, they moved on skis, they knew every trail, every forest, every hiding spot, and they used tactics that the Soviets couldn't counter. One of the most effective Finnish tactics was called Madi. The Finns would allow Soviet columns to advance deep into Finnish territory along narrow forest roads, then Finnish ski troops would circle behind them, cutting them off from their supply lines and surrounding them. Trapped in the forest, exposed to the cold, the Soviet troops would be systematically destroyed. And among the Finnish soldiers defending their homeland was a 34-year-old farmer named Heya.
Part 3. The Sniper into Battle. When the Soviet Union invaded, Heya immediately answered the call. He was assigned to the 6th Company of Infantry Regiment 34, commanded by Lieutenant Aaron Juutalainen. His unit was sent to the Kola region, north of Lake Ladoga, one of the most critical defensive sectors. The Battle of Kola would become legendary in Finnish military history. For 105 days, outnumbered Finnish forces held the Kola River line against massive Soviet assaults. The Soviets threw division after division at the Finnish positions, trying to break through. The Finns held. Simo was assigned as a sniper. He was given a Finnish-produced M/28-30 rifle, a variant of the Russian Mosin Nagant. It was an excellent weapon, reliable, accurate, and well-suited to the brutal conditions. The Finns nicknamed it Pistukorva, pointy ears, because of the distinctive shape of the front sight. But Simo made one critical modification. He refused to use a telescopic scope. Most snipers use scopes to magnify distant targets, but Simo understood that in the Finnish winter, scopes were a liability. Scopes could fog up in the extreme cold, rendering them useless. And worse, the glass lenses could reflect sunlight, giving away the sniper's position. A single glint of light could mean death. So Simo used only iron sights. This meant he had to get closer to his targets, but it also meant he remained invisible. And Simo's natural skill with the rifle made the lack of magnification irrelevant. He could hit a target at 150 meters with pinpoint accuracy. Simo developed a routine. Every morning before dawn, he would ski to his position, a carefully prepared snow pit overlooking Soviet lines. He would dress entirely in white camouflage suit, white face covering, everything. He would carry only a day's worth of supplies, bread, sugar, and ammunition. Then Simo would lie in the snow and wait. For 12 hours at a time, Simo would remain motionless, watching Soviet positions through his iron sights. The cold was unbearable. -40 degrees Celsius felt like knives stabbing into exposed skin. But Simo endured. He packed snow into his mouth to prevent his breath from creating visible vapor that might give away his position. He created small piles of snow in front of him to absorb the muzzle blast and prevent snow from being kicked up when he fired. And when a Soviet soldier entered his killing zone, Simo fired. 1 shot, 1 kill, then silence again. Over the course of the Winter War, Simo Heya would kill over 500 enemy soldiers in just 100 days. Part 4. The White Death. Terror in the Red Army. As Simo's kill count grew, Soviet soldiers began to notice. Men would disappear, shot dead by an unseen enemy. Patrols would venture into the forest and never return. Officers would be killed from impossible distances, and no one ever saw the shooter. The Soviet soldiers began to whisper about a ghost, a phantom who moved through the snow without leaving tracks. They called him Belaya Smert, the White Death. The nickname spread through the Red Army like wildfire. Soldiers became terrified of being sent to the Kola sector. They knew that somewhere in those frozen forests, the White Death was waiting, and if he chose you, you were already dead. The Soviet command became obsessed with killing Simo. They sent their own snipers, elite marksmen trained specifically to hunt enemy snipers. Simo killed them all. The Soviets sent artillery units to bombard areas where they suspected Simo was operating. Simo would disappear before the shells landed, then return to the same position days later. At one point, the Soviets launched a massive artillery barrage that lasted for hours, blanketing an entire section of forest with explosive shells. They were certain they had killed the White Death. But the next day, Soviet soldiers began dying again. Simo had survived. And Finnish propaganda seized on Simo's exploits. Newspapers ran stories about the invisible soldier who was single-handedly holding back the Soviet advance. Simo became a symbol of Finnish resistance, a David fighting Goliath. The Finnish people called him Taika Ampuja, the magic shooter. But Simo himself never sought fame. He didn't give interviews. He didn't brag about his kills. When asked about his success, Simo would simply say, "I did what I was told to do." By the end of February 1940, Simo Heya's confirmed kill count stood at over 500. Military chaplains, division commanders, and fellow soldiers kept records, though estimates varied. Some sources reported 219 confirmed kills. Others reported 259. Simo himself would later write in his personal memoir that he killed around 500 Soviet soldiers. But on March 6, 1940, just 11 days before the war would end, Simo's luck ran out. Part 5. The Explosive Bullet. Shot in the Face. On the morning of March 6, 1940, Simo was in his usual position, hidden in the snow, watching Soviet lines. It was another bitterly cold day. The war had been raging for over 3 months, and both sides were exhausted. A Soviet soldier spotted something, a shadow, a shape that didn't quite belong. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet was an explosive round designed to fragment on impact and cause maximum damage. It struck Simo in the lower left jaw. The impact was catastrophic. The left side of Simo's face was destroyed. His jaw was shattered. Teeth were blown out. Blood poured from the wound. Simo collapsed into the snow, unconscious. His comrades rushed to him, dragging him out of the snow and onto a stretcher. They couldn't believe he was still alive. Half his face was gone. They rushed him to a field hospital, but the doctors didn't give him much chance of survival. Simo fell into a coma. For 11 days, Simo hovered between life and death. Surgeons worked to stabilize him, to repair what could be repaired. But the damage was severe. Even if he survived, his face would be permanently disfigured. On March 13, 1940, Simo Heya woke up. That same day, Finland and the Soviet Union signed the Moscow Peace Treaty, ending the Winter War. Simo had survived, and he had awakened on the exact day the war ended. Part 6. The Aftermath. Hero of Finland. The Winter War was over. Finland had not been conquered, but the cost was high. Finland was forced to cede about 11% of its territory to the Soviet Union, including the Karelian Isthmus and the city of Viipuri. Over 400,000 Finns were displaced from their homes. But Finland had survived. Against impossible odds, a nation of 4 million had fought a superpower of 170 million to a standstill. Finnish losses were about 25,000 dead. Soviet losses were estimated between 130,000 and 250,000 dead. And much of the credit for Finland's survival went to soldiers like Simo Heya. Simo was promoted from corporal to lieutenant II, an unprecedented jump in rank. He was awarded numerous medals, including the prestigious Mannerheim Cross, named after Finland's great field marshal Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim. But the injuries Simo suffered would mark him for life. His jaw had to be reconstructed through multiple surgeries. The left side of his face was permanently scarred and disfigured. When he smiled, the left side of his mouth didn't move properly. Speaking was difficult for a while.
But Simo recovered. It took several years of rehabilitation, but by the mid-1940s, Simo had regained most of his functionality. He would live with the scars and the pain for the rest of his life, but he never complained. Simo returned to his farm near Rautjärvi, but the border had shifted, and his childhood home was now in the Soviet side of the new border. So Simo found a new farm and settled into a quiet life. For decades, Simo lived in relative obscurity. He became a hunter and dog breeder. He avoided publicity. He rarely spoke about the war. When journalists came to interview him, Simo would politely decline or give short, humble answers. When asked if he felt remorse for killing so many men, Simo replied, "I did what I was told to do, as best as I could. There would be no Finland if everyone else hadn't done the same." Part 7. Rediscovery and Legacy. The legend lives on. For many years, Simo Heya was known only in Finland, but in the 1990s and 2000s, as military historians began researching the Winter War more thoroughly, Simo's story began to reach a wider audience. In 1998, a Major Tapio Saaralainen, a Finnish military historian and sniper instructor, began interviewing Simo extensively. Saaralainen would meet with Simo dozens of times between 1997 and 2002, recording his stories and memories. The result was a comprehensive biography titled The White Sniper, Simo Heya. Then, in 2017, something extraordinary was discovered. Hidden for decades, Simo's personal war memoir, written in 1940, just months after he was wounded, was found. Titled Sotamuistoja, War Memories, the memoir recounted Simo's experiences from November 1939 to March 1940. It was a treasure trove of first-hand information about the Winter War and Simo's tactics. Today, Simo Heya is recognized as the deadliest sniper in military history. His confirmed kill count of over 500 in just 100 days has never been matched. By comparison, the top American sniper Chris Kyle had 160 confirmed kills over multiple deployments spanning years. Carlos Hathcock, the legendary Marine sniper, had 93 confirmed kills. Simo's story has been celebrated in books, documentaries, and even heavy metal songs. Swedish band Sabaton released a song called White Death in 2010 on their album Coat of Arms. The song has introduced millions of people worldwide to Simo's story. A movie about Simo's life, Simo Heya, The White Death, is currently in production. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from the Finnish people themselves. Simo is revered in Finland as a national hero, a symbol of Finnish courage and determination. Statues and memorials honor his memory. His story is taught in schools, and when Finland faces challenges, people still remember the quiet farmer who stood against an empire and refused to yield. Part 8. The Final Years, a Long and Peaceful Life. After World War II, Simo Heya lived a quiet, peaceful life. He never married. He lived alone on his farm, tending to his dogs and hunting in the forests he loved. He avoided fame and attention, preferring the solitude of the countryside. He was friendly with his neighbors and community members, but he remained introverted and private. He would occasionally attend veterans' gatherings and reunions, but he never gave speeches or sought recognition. In 1972, Simo bought himself a yellow Volkswagen 1300 from a car dealership in Imatra for about 10,000 Finnish marks. That car is still preserved today, hidden in the attic of a barn in his former home municipality of Rautjärvi. The current owners have announced they have no intention of selling it. As Simo grew older, his health remained remarkably good. He continued hunting into his 80s and 90s. He lived independently until the very end of his life. On April 1, 2002, Simo Heya died peacefully at the age of 96. He had lived for 62 years after the war, more than twice as long as the 34 years he had lived before it. He outlived the Soviet Union itself, which collapsed in 1991. Simo was buried with full military honors. Veterans across Finland attended his funeral. Finnish media covered his passing extensively, honoring the man who had saved their nation. But even in death, Simo remained humble. His gravestone is simple, with no grand inscriptions or boasts, just his name, his dates, and his service. Part 9. The Tactics of the White Death. How he did it. So how did Simo Heya achieve such extraordinary success? What made him the deadliest sniper in history? The answer lies in a combination of natural skill, intelligent tactics, and extraordinary discipline. First, Simo had natural talent. He had been hunting since childhood, and his marksmanship was exceptional. But talent alone doesn't explain 500 kills. Simo's tactics were brilliant. Refusing to use a scope. This kept him hidden and prevented fogging issues. Positioning. Simo would arrive at his position before dawn and leave after sunset, maximizing his time in position. Camouflage. Complete white clothing and face covering made him invisible in the snow. Breath control. Packing snow in his mouth prevented visible breath vapor. Snow piles. Creating small snow mounds in front of him absorbed muzzle blast and prevented snow from being kicked up when he fired. Patience. Simo could lie motionless for 12 hours straight waiting for targets. Minimal movement. After taking a shot, Simo would remain completely still, not even turning his head to confirm the kill. Situational awareness. Simo always positioned himself with an escape route and multiple fallback positions. Energy conservation. Bringing bread and sugar to eat provided quick energy without requiring him to move. But perhaps the most important factor was Simo's mental discipline. The cold was excruciating. The boredom was crushing. The fear of counter-snipers and artillery was constant. But Simo never wavered. He endured everything the enemy and the environment could throw at him, and he never quit. Conclusion. The meaning of Simo Heya. So what can we learn from the life of Simo Heya? First, that true courage is quiet. Simo never bragged. He never sought fame. He simply did his duty and went home. Second, that skill is built through patience and practice. Simo's deadly accuracy came from years of hunting, countless hours of practice, and a lifetime of discipline. Third, that size doesn't matter. Simo was 5'3" and weighed about 150 pounds, but he killed over 500 enemy soldiers who never saw him coming. Fourth, that one person can make a difference. Simo's actions helped save Finland's independence. One farmer, with a rifle, changed the course of history. And finally, that honor and humility can coexist. Simo was a hero, but he never acted like one. When asked about his kills, he said simply, "I did what I was told to do, as best as I could." Simo Heya, the quiet Finnish farmer, became the deadliest sniper in military history.
He killed over 500 enemy soldiers in 100 days. He survived being shot in the face with an explosive bullet. He lived to be 96 years old, and through it all, he remained humble, quiet, and decent. The Soviets called him the White Death. The Finns called him the Magic Shooter. But Simo called himself simply a soldier who did his duty. That is the legacy of Simo Heya, and that is why his story will be told for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share this video. We'll be back with more incredible stories of warriors whose courage changed history. Until then, remember what Simo Heya proved, that courage, skill, and determination can defeat even the greatest odds.